for the movie, were they actually Metallica fans, or did you guys have them hired in or something?
It was a combination of over the course of the 7 to 10 days that we used to shoot the concert part. There were some full-length shows in Edmonton. There were a couple full-length run-throughs in Vancouver, and then there was a couple 3-4 days of start-stop, song at a time, a gag at a time. Let's get the electric chair, all that type of stuff. There were we did like a $5 tip. We sort of found out along the way that if you invite people to come for free, a lot of times they're not sure that they don't have a vested interest in showing up. So we charge people $5, donated the money to Western Canadian food banks, and our band, we're not super sort of precious about credits and this and that, blah. You know, Nimrod, we asked Nimrod to write, we gave him some outlines. Nimrod wrote the story. I mean, it's 90% of the credit should go to Nimrod.
You know, with that said, it was a consistent back and forth, and I would go and present ideas to them, and there would be certain things that would fall through. Quick example, like, Trip was on a bike originally, and I think Rob was like, dude, skates, bro, on a bike, you know, so I think that, you know, that's kind of like, there was a lot of that, and then there was also ideas that I came up with, and they weren't feeling it, so we readjusted, and it was definitely a back and forth collaborative process throughout.
I'm gonna go again. What? The kid took drugs. What kind of drugs was he taking?
Well, the drug was one of those creative conversations. For instance, it was written in the original draft, and then at one point I wanted to cut it out, and there was just, you know, there was a big talk, and I think that the consensus was that it should be there. What it represents and any of the symbolism in the film, I think, much like Metallica's music, and it's not always just here's the answer, you know. And I think that we tried to. I mean, I was tasked with something pretty difficult. You know, you have some of the most incredible musicians, the biggest band in the world. You know, bringing an energy and a passion, and then I have to try to at least bring that level of power to the visuals and to the narrative that these guys do on the stage. That was a very daunting task in general. But you know, I think that a lot of it's left to interpretation, and you know, 100 people see one single painting, and there'll probably be 100 different interpretations as to what that means. And we wanted to leave those doors open and let the viewer put themselves into it.
It's interesting because in Russia, somebody had said that, well, you know, drugs are illegal in Russia. How do you have this? And I think Lars said, well, it could be a cold tablet. You know,
You're taking his vitamins.
It's congested. He wants to know.
Vitamins are legal in Russia.
And where do we get some of those drugs?
What is a Nimrod way of doing things? And also, this is your first foray into 3D making.
Yeah.
Do you think 3D making is the future?
You know, as far as my way of doing things, I've been very fortunate to been given opportunities to partake in things that have when I'm in the moment, I don't always appreciate the gifts that I have, but you know, there are times when, remember for this movie, there was one time where I was sitting in a car going to a screening. Oh, it was the Comic-Con. I'm driving down to Comic-Con, and I'm sitting in my car, and I think to myself, I'm driving to Comic-Con to introduce a film that I shot for Metallica
brightest